Live from the internet, it's the Narrative After Show, bringing you the entire week in review. With Rachel Binnicoffer, Eric Garland, and here's your host, Zeb Chalet.
And just like that, we made it to Friday. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the After Show on Narrative Live. It's so good to see you guys. You like the music, Eric. I think you like it. I think you like the little swing that we have there. He seems
I'm
to
listening
enjoy
to
it.
something else entirely. What? Who? What?
It's going to be that kind of show, is
our
it?
names have ever gone with classy jazz, Eric. I felt pretty good about that, you know?
It's pretty elegant, right?
Yeah.
Rachel Binnicoffer is here and Eric Garland are here, as they always are on a Friday. It's good to be with you as we do the recap of the news, the entire week in review. Tonight, really only 3 topics going to make it to the show, maybe more. We'll see how it goes. One of them is Elon Musk, because if you, like me, are fearful of going to a dinner party this weekend where someone is going to ask you, what do you think about Elon Musk buying Twitter? I've researched this topic and I will give you some answers. That's coming up later in the show. But the big news of the day has got to be Marjorie Taylor Greene on the stand, lying her you-know-what off. Rachel Binnicoffer has very kindly and very nobly listened to the entire affair for 8 hours today. Rachel, thank you for doing that. It's really God's work, and we appreciate it. What's your big takeaway?
Yeah. Somebody rang my doorbell. Literally,
Hamilton has got something to say.
That
yeah,
was
that's
more
exactly
articulate.
what the take is, though, right? I mean, bark, God, right? No, it was.
Can you just get that? Because you can. You can get that. Do you want to get that?
Yep. Yeah. Hopefully that will stop.
Okay. You're welcome to get it if you need to. We can chat about it.
Yeah, but anyway, here, it's still, I will tell you, you can see the tiredness of my eyes and streaming onto the phone watching this trial. But it was fascinating and it was so important, and we are going to get some laughs about it. But as one of you guys said before the show, lots of seriousness on trial today too in that little affair. So, are
you sure we don't put Hamilton in another room? Are we okay with him being here for the entire show?
Yeah, no, it's, it's just my autistic son forgets, hey, don't bring anybody over from 4 to 5 every day.
Yeah. So I've got some interesting things to tell people before we jump into the clips from today's MTJ. Is that right? MTG hearing. Firstly, people should know that we're very thankful to our patrons on this show, because without you, none of this would happen. It's Eric and Rachel and me, but really it's only possible because of our patrons. So we welcome you, and we welcome you to join our Patreon program at patreon.com/narrative. But also, because we love you so much, there is now a hotline, a red phone, if you would, that you can call us directly by messaging us. It's like a modern red phone. And you can call us at any time, send us your messages. We will take them, and you don't have to speak. It'll just be text. But we'll be happy to show you them on our phone, on our air, if you send us our messages. Now, to access the red phone, only patrons can go to narrative.org/TV. That's narrative.org/TV. That's where you can talk to us about whatever it is you want to talk to us about. Maybe it's better if you talk to us about the topics on today's show, like MTG and Elon Musk, but we'll take any comments at narrative.org/TV. So that's something you need to know about. Also, you will see throughout the show something new. There's a little barcode thingy. What do you call this? QR code? Because we're so on top of things here, we're so into the future that you can now scan that. And apparently it will take you to the podcast page, the Narrative podcast page, and you can make sure you follow the podcast. And you'll have it there for your future reference. If you need to ever find us, you'll know where to find us on Apple Podcasts. So that's the business end of things.
And it will not download Pegasus software onto your phone. We promise.
I promise it's not. It's actually done by Apple itself, and they guarantee me that there's no guarantee me. There's no Pegasus.
I'm taking all this innovation, this fancy shit to mean that you did not actually take a vacation, and instead did a bunch of shit you weren't supposed to be doing on vacation, huh?
I love doing all this stuff because it just, it keeps me busy, and what else could I do with my time? So I enjoy it.
Well, I do have one critical feedback I think you need, though. This is really important for all of us, all of our sakes.
Yeah.
The red phone. Yeah. Nobody under the age of 20 or 30. And literally,
no, but
at the Children's
Rachel, we're
Museum,
gonna.
they have a phone, and I watched the little kids go up and try to figure out how you would call somebody on it, the rotary phone, and it's so funny. So, yeah.
I beg to
But
differ.
we will order nuclear strikes. You didn't get the memo. We have the thing. We're cool.
In TV control rooms around the country, still, I believe there are still red phones because it really is the only way that execs or senior presidents of the company can reach a control room producer if they need to in a hurry, is to call the red phone number. And it's really only used for that. And you really hate it when it rings. You freak the hell out because you're like, oh no, we did something really, really wrong. Sometimes they don't say that you did something wrong, but that's what the red phone, really does exist.
And it is legit red, like it's red.
It's legit red, and you can't miss it, and you know what it's for. Like you see it, you're like, okay.
Why are you having Ghislaine Maxwell on as a guest?
Exactly.
That's the phone that Murdoch used to call to make Gretchen show more skirt while she was on the air.
Oh my gosh,
Remember how he used to do that? The Fox News predators. They'd sit up there and call him in and be like, "Tell her to move her legs." You guys didn't see that movie?
No, I haven't seen that movie, but I believe that it's probably quite true.
It had Nicole Kidman and somebody else that was major in it, and it brings to life the Fox News sex harassment scandal. So well done. I think it's called Bombshell. You should definitely see that.
Definitely check it out. That sounds really good. By the way,
hold on. So I'm certainly not going to put Rachel in this, but Zev, we might need a camera shot for you and I that's like a glass top table, and everyone, I guess, will wear kilts.
I actually have a glass top table, and I'm naked from the waist down. But
after I saw those Madison Cawthorn partying pictures, I just can't take any more today.
No more visuals. We won't go. Oh, were there pictures? I didn't see the pictures.
Oh, yeah, they came out today. I mean, this has been
Where have I been?
Week in news. Not to bump ahead into the agenda, but what a week! And then after 8 hours of MTG on stage, what do I get? I get a Politico piece with photos of Madison Cawthorn dressed up in a brawl, drunk off his ass, partying with some chicks.
I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, really, it's not surprising. Although, I always, I wouldn't even go there, but.
Well, he's the orgy and coke guy,
Well, yeah, the orgy and coke guy, but he's paraplegic. I always find it so difficult to understand how he does these things.
There's a lot of orgy. There's a lot of orgy. Look, we don't want. Look. Do we want to talk down orgies and coke here? Yeah. I don't know what the brand of the show is, but I want to.
It's definitely orgies and coke.
It's been a rough week for the people of the GOP, partly because of the orgies and coke, but also because it's been a rough week for them, MTG, and then they're also their patron. Have you seen what happened to their patron saint, Mr. Vladimir Putin? Have you seen what's happened to him? Spare a thought for this man as I try to find this thing. This is
well, it was the Flynn brothers couldn't get on this show for love or money. I mean, that was the biggest loss to the Republicans.
But yes, but we have this guy. How it started, how it's going. I mean,
which is supposed to be, which is the before and after, which is the good part there. I don't see
it's
a
all
hero.
Downhill. It starts bad and it goes down.
It's the horse's hair in that photo. Do you see?
You know what?
That's a good looking hair, man.
What happened to his hair? Look at his hair. He looks like a Soviet era civil servant waiting for his pension. Is what he looks like.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, man.
Yeah.
No, the horse's haircut. I have slept on that. That's the best part of that photo, and I never noticed until Rachel picked it up. So
that is a great.
I don't know why it stood out because I've looked at that photo so many times, Eric. But boy, it's like the rock of ages of horse's hair.
That's fashion forward, like fierce.
Yeah, no, that was
none of us noticed it until Rachel.
In fact, things have gotten so bad for Vladimir Putin that he's actually now going around in this, which is
that's a good visual.
I spent a lot of time on Photoshop last night because who can resist that?
That's worthy. That's worthy.
I like
that's worthy of time.
Okay. We didn't talk about this, so I don't expect the tweet, but there was apparently the Ukrainians, there was the cruiser Moskva that got sunk, and I believe it's the first flagship of a major power that's ever been sunk by a country that doesn't have a fucking navy, which is a serious thing.
They have a navy in Ukraine. They have one.
No, in 2014, Russia seized their navy.
That's right.
Most of their navy was in Sevastopol, and most of like the cruisers and anything that was military, they didn't. It's funny, it never made it on the news, and like it never became part of that discussion. It was like, oh, they just took Crimea. No, they took all the warships that were in Crimea. They took over the naval power of the Ukraine in the Black Sea. And I believe they had some different supply ships, corvettes, some different stuff, but their major like missile cruisers or anything that they had, that the Russians seized that. And anyhow, the Moskva but despite not having a navy, they sunk a Russian flagship, and they declared that wreck part of like a UNESCO heritage site or something like that. They declared it like an underwater theme park, like for serious for the. It's part of it's part of the Ukrainian Cultural Heritage Center or something.
Every national will have to go and dive to get to see the boat in the future, or what's left of it.
That is trolling. Like you don't normally have trolling in wars. Like it's not. They took the beaches at Normandie and it's like whackity schmackity doo. They didn't get all cutesy, but these guys, they have jokes. They have commemorative stamps. Fuck your worship, and I mean.
God bless them.
They got comedy writers. We split off part of the Conan O'Brien battalion and handed them to these guys, and
they have a comedian who's the president. I mean,
I didn't even make that connection. Yeah,
so that's a big deal.
I don't know any dumb comedians, because you have to be I think just inherently intellectual to do stand-up comedy. It's so demanding in terms of what you're trying to do all at the same time with it. It just seems like it breeds smart and also very complex, depressed people like myself.
Yes, indeed, it does. Well,
my favorites.
If you want some jokes, here's so Representative Greene, as you all know, was on the stand today defending her comments, defending her statements, her actions ahead of January the 6th, because let's face it, she's an insurrectionist. Here's a clip from what happened as she was describing her reaction as they heard that shots were being fired.
Breaking in or being.
And when you were notified that people had entered the Capitol illegally, did you also understand at that point that there had been violence at the Capitol?
I only knew what I was told. I'd heard a gunshot. We all heard it. And we were so confused. We thought Antifa was breaking in or BLM because of those were the riots that had gone on and on all throughout 2020, day in and day out. Just horrible riots all over the country. And that was the only thing that made sense to most of us, breaking in or.
That was the only thing that made sense to her. I mean, even though she was there just a few days ago calling for a insurrection and martial law and all sorts of things, the only thing that came to mind was BLM. That makes complete sense. Rachel, what was that all about during her thing today?
That was her messaging effort. And to be fair, the attorney let her go on for about another second after that, but before he was like, objection, no relevancy here, But yeah, she's always on stage. Even in this legal precarious position, you could tell that she was doing performative art, right? Now, I will say it was handled well, but I always have such high standards for what I want, and I would have liked to have seen him use the opportunity to grill her down a little bit more. But I think we're going to see that she was left with no choice to either lie, tell the truth, or just pretend that she has dementia, and we're going to see that that's what she goes with the third.
Well, and the first one, she lies as well, right? I mean, she also does lie quite blatantly. She says in her statements there, under oath, that she's never heard of the notion of QAnon, and we know that's not true because here's a clip. Here's a clip we found.
How much you guys know about Q? It's an anonymous person. All right, so Q is a patriot. We know that for sure, but we do not know who Q is. Okay. So now the question is, I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to tell you, I don't know who Q is, but I'm just going to tell you about it because I think it's something worth listening to and paying attention to. Okay, and the reason why is because many of the things that he has given clues about and talked about on 4chan and other forums have really proven to be true. Okay, so there's some how much.
I would let you go.
I
into
did
any
not
details
have
there.
Q with that anonymous. I did not have.
She did not inhale, Eric. But only because Nancy Pelosi forced her to wear a mask, you know?
I mean,
Nancy Pelosi, Antifa, critical
No, yeah,
race
no,
thesis.
Oh, you're killing me.
I
Oh.
think too, like, it's really important though, right? Like to also acknowledge that she fucking knows, right? So every time that bitch said "I don't know" is technically a lie because she knows.
She
knows
knows.
everything she did, dude.
She's on tape. She knows. She's
Yep.
right there.
Look, she had been like elected like 9 seconds before that, and notice they're like, it's a fake election. Then why the fuck are you here?
Right.
If it was fake and we got to redo it, then go back to Satan's colon where you came from or whatever. And it's like, well, no, just the part that we don't like is fake. Yeah, we need a writer's room. You need to get Zelensky's writer's room in here with notes. And like, did you think this plot all the way through? They did not.
Do you think, what is the role of these people? Like, what are these comedians that are there as representatives? I mean, the Madison Cawthorns and this one, MTG and what's in Boebert? Haven't heard from her for a while.
Boebert.
Yeah, what are they actually doing? Like, is it just they're just a gaslight contingency? I mean, is that what they do? They're just out there to shock us all. I mean,
yeah, so we look at the dummies instead of the Koch brothers and all the oligarchs.
And when you say Koch brothers, you don't mean Madison Cawthorn's orgies. You mean the other Koch brothers.
I don't know. Let's not talk about him having sex again on the show. I'm going to have my agent write that in my contract. We're done talking about.
Well, let's be clear though. Like the Cawthorns,
I don't want
the MPs, like those guys. They're a fire that burned out of control. Like they are the Frankenstein that the Kochs created. Right. Yeah. They had all these ideas about, hey, we're going to use this propaganda network. We're going to tell people this, and this. It's going to drive them to the polls. It's going to drive them away from Democrats. All fucking fine and dandy until that shit rose from the grave and then came and ate them alive. Right. And so like, it isn't, it's really important, I think, for people to understand the reason MTG doesn't get punished by congressional leadership is that they can't punish her because that's the party now. Like the base of the fucking party is her, not Kevin McCarthy, not
they created a monster.
All these older school Republicans. The reason that they have their balls in the hanger like that is because the base likes her more than it likes any of the so-called establishment Republicans. I just think it's really important to differentiate today's Republican Party, the GOP 2.0, from the one that existed prior to Donald Trump's ascension to the presidency.
It's really that different, hey? You actually study this for a living, so I know, Eric, you want to jump in, but you actually study this for a living, and what you seeing in the polls is that there's a completely different GOP out there.
Yeah, we never talk about what has happened, how we got to this place, and there's many things, right? But drilling down on this one thing, it's important to remember the Republican Party had a civil war, okay? Started off as a little insurrection with some Tea Party shit in the 2010 cycle, and then that shit started rolling. And then when they killed off electorally Eric Cantor in Virginia's 7th district, tanking his ascension to the speakership, they started to move towards away from the autopsy and towards like the base, right? And Donald Trump walked right into that. And when he came, it took a simmering civil war that was slightly favoring the radicals and blew it out the gate. And he could not get an elite endorsement until after it was close to Iowa when he finally got his first elected endorsement. Okay. It was a hostile takeover, but once it was taken over, the few jumped ship. And that's why we see that decline in party ID is mostly right heading into the fall election of 2016. The people who got off the boat right then, and Eric probably knows a lot of them as I do, those people left. There was an exodus, the measurable exodus. After that, the hangers on have generally stayed there. Okay. Now, I do think we can get more of them if we go after their brand loyalty and we remind them of how Republicans have betrayed their two core issue areas, the economic and national security realm. And so there's growth in those realignments or de-alignments for us to be had. But that's what we're looking at. And the media just keeps talking about this Republican Party like it's the same fucking thing from 2006 even, okay? This is not. Yeah. This is a distinct, different party. It had purges. All of the people that used to be called conservatives are now ultra moderates, right? All of the actual like old school, like, William F. Buckley type conservatives were kicked out of the party. Dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like the intellectual conservative movement it was exercised basically to adopt Trumpism, and now we're dealing with a different beast, and we have to accept that it's not an honest opposition party. It's an ideological movement, and some people could probably accurately call it a cult.
Yeah. There's certainly, I mean, there's certainly no like Senator Jack Danforth, like the senior, he's retired senior senator, very, very powerful figure in the Republican Party, who said the worst thing he ever did was back Josh Hawley. There is no Danforth in the Republican Party right now, and I mean, my God, like the Boeberts and Greenes, they make Tom DeLay look like Cicero.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God!
Jim Jordan makes Boehner look like John Boehner look like Augustus Caesar.
No shit, dude. No shit.
And that's, and to take your point on the dates, Rachel, we're talking a period of years. Like, look, I'm not pining for the good old days of Tom DeLay and Jack Abramoff were like foreign agents and so, like.
Well, I am, dude, because at least Republicans knew Putin bad back then, right? And like didn't want to actually kill us, you know. So when to some respect, like I look back to 2006, I'm like, fuck, I wish I could go back there and at least I could sleep at night, you know.
They liked Chinese casinos pretty good. There were issues, but but none of them were like shit. You know, we did. Okay, I distinctly remember the feeling in DC after the 2006 election. After quite a bit of the George W. Bush years, and of course, even us Intel analysts who try to stay very nonpartisan, it was like, there's going to be some grown-ups back, or at least we're going to roll back. This reckless crew of people who look like the golden age of Athens now, right? Dick Cheney's daughter is part of the Saviors crew, right? We do none of it. It's January 1st, 2007. Go back and talk to your January 1st, 2007 political self and go, man, you're going to be so excited when Liz Cheney flies in to save the day. We're like, what the ass? Oh, no, Donald Trump gets elected president. Well, first we have a black dude for president. What? Yeah, no, like Clinton flames out. We have a black dude, for two. And then Donald Trump takes what in the fuck are you people that, what happened? It's a long story, but there was this sigh of relief in 2007, that those folks were getting out. And it's just,
and all of them are who we look to be the moral compass of today's, Republican coalition. I mean, that is now their fucking moral center is the people that were so bad in 2016 or 2006 that people were in the streets protesting.
That's how far we've moved along the spectrum. It's quite unbelievable. Now, Mitch McConnell says, and I don't know if you want to take anything Mitch McConnell says seriously, that if they land up putting up a whole bunch of radicals or extremists as in the next election, that they will do badly. Now, they're going to put up a lot of extremists, but they're also going to do better than expected. So what's the truth behind all of that, Rachel? Is too much extremism bad for the prospects for the House, for the Republicans?
Look, I have no idea if McConnell knows this or not. If he was acting or fronting for the camera and he doesn't disclose everything he thinks and feels, right? But the fact of the matter is, what happened in 2010, what happened in 2012 to a lesser extent against Claire McCaskill with Todd Akin, is demonstrably not what we're seeing happen in more recent cycles on the Republican side. Okay. When we look at Roy Moore, he did lose his election. That was the special election against Doug Jones. And he was the credibly accused child molester guy that they wanted to send to Alabama Senate. He got 90% of all the people who showed up and said that they were Republicans, which is a lot of people. And Doug Jones won that election by just a couple of points. I mean, it was within like a point or two. So it was very, very close. And it was not because Republicans broke away. Now, to highlight how different that is, in 2012, that Aiken cycle with legitimate rape, Claire McCaskill actually got an extra 10 points of Republican vote. You can see it in the polling data. So instead of, breaking against her at 90, they broke against her at 80%. So 80% of Republicans still voted for Aiken. And that was when we were still somewhat healthy, right? So like this idea that and I mean, certainly as a person trying to save democracy, I want them to nominate the dumbest, weakest candidates they can. The Republican Party's not stupid like us, though. Like whoever the fuck they nominate, if it's Melmot Oz or the dude, the Heisman winner Herschel Walker down in Georgia, who can't even put two words together, the Republicans are going to spend mad money. They're going to be 100% committed to electing this individual, and the Democrats will get like the nominee they really want, and then one that's good that beat this one that was had all these advantages, and then they'll turn their back on him and be like, this isn't the person we thought would win the district. So Republicans are going to be competitive. We may very well come out of that cycle seeing both Pennsylvania and Georgia taken over by nut jobs.
Wow. Well, that's lovely. DeSantis's redistricting thing in Florida, is that going to hold? Is that going to actually hold? There are now 4 new GOP seats basically in Florida because he decided to redraw the map
which makes, by the way, puts the House of Representatives back. I mean, technically, it was already going to be a miracle to hit 218 with the other Florida map. And if DeSantis puts this one in, it basically buffers them on our best case, right? So it's a big problem. And here's the thing. I think DeSantis will be stopped by courts, but I don't know that he's going to care,
I mean, he has to, doesn't he? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. No one knows anything anymore, it seems. Like it just
seems... Vance is telling people, there's no enforcement mechanism. It's not like the court has a military. So if the court rules against them favorably, that's what you guys saw J.D. Vance's statement. It was like full on Mein Kampf, right? He says we should go and take all over the left institutions, ideologically purge them of wokeism. Okay.
Wow.
And you guys didn't see this?
I didn't see it. No, I didn't see that.
It's so crazy.
I saw it go by and I was just like,
Vance. And then when the courts rule against us, we'll just tell them to fuck off because they don't have an army, which is like a famous quote from one of these historical.
You
guys should see this.
The Supreme, it was Andrew Jackson. The Supreme Court's ruled this. They can send their
army. It's incredible because it was Dave Weigel that brought it out for Twitter, and he's not going to put something up that's not legit. So.
So there's a bit of history there, Eric. You were suggesting that there's just remind us of the history there because I'm just curious about it. I don't know enough about American history.
Andrew Jackson. I believe the Supreme Court ruled against Jackson's treatment of the Native Americans, and so they delivered their ruling. And Andrew Jackson said, "Well, that's very interesting. They can send their army and enforce it."
That's what he quoted.
And note it's Andrew Jackson's. Look, I can't wait till we put Harriet Tubman on that $20 bill. Because she's a nurse, a spy, a badass, all the things.
Yeah.
Put her on the 20. But the only other place you'd see Jackson is Trump, who's a guy from Queens, remember? So shouldn't have a lot of those nostalgias. He had Jackson's portrait up in the Oval Office, I think, from the beginning, which was a very early threat from these guys. That's like we're in, and if you want to come out, you're getting a fight. So they kind of called their shot there very early.
So we need an army. Is that what we're saying?
That Jackson portrait in the White House. I mean, I remember, Eric. I'm so glad you also zeroed in on that because I remember just the first time I saw that, the sinking feeling I got in my gut, and like previous to that, of course, I generally had joked around about like this isn't going to end well. It's going to have to end in some kind of coup of some type. And then I saw that Jackson shit, and I realized, no, this is fucking bad. Like they know exactly what they're doing. It's much more smart than people think it is, right? And you can't be shouting. I mean, it's like it was such a tell that it was deeply ideologically committed to this idea of a superior executive. And keep in mind what Vance is saying, what Jackson argued back then is, okay, if the court's going to say something is unconstitutional, I'm going to say, fuck you don't have an army, you can't enforce it. And with that, you are basically toppling like a pillar of our constitutional order. It's not a small thing.
Yeah.
No. Speaking of executive rule and superiority, that came up in today's MTG hearing. Here's a moment I was surprised to see. A lawyer representing President Trump in the former President Trump in the Greene candidacy hearing. Here's that clip.
Discuss that topic. The idea that there should be martial law declared in the United States prior to the inauguration of President Biden.
Your Honor, I'm going to have to object. I actually represent the President of the United States, and that's covered by executive privilege. She can't get into any of this conversation.
Executive privilege. She's not a member of the executive, and this counsel is here on her behalf, not on Mr. Trump's behalf, unless there's something I missed. It's not a proper objection, Your Honor. Discuss that.
Well, there you go. So I don't know what he was doing there, but hello, Trump's lawyer. Executive privilege? No, you can't claim that, really, can you? I mean, is it even possible under these circumstances? None.
No, you cannot.
She's not part of the executive. Can you imagine if she were? Secretary of State or something?
There's so much wrong with that, like, phone book lawyer's assertion of executive privilege. But my favorite part is that MTG's like, yeah. That he totally had her convinced,
Oh man, we argue papal infallibility.
Yeah.
That's not how this works. That's not how any.
There
of
were
this
some
works.
nice moments of today's community service, and that was definitely one of them.
I mean,
She's
boy,
not part of the there's are you sleep? There's going to be like marital fights. Like, are you sleeping with your secretary? That's covered by executive privilege.
Yeah, exactly. I cannot say that.
She serves.
I
as the
heard it one
legislative
time on the
branch.
news.
Fuck it, right? It's still executive privilege.
Seems to be where we're living these days. This is where we're at.
Unless it's a discussion that happened in the Presidential Emergency Operations Center, and you're asking about that, which would be covered by executive privilege, that should be retitled for everyone. Fuck you, I'm not answering that question. Go fuck yourself. And
Yes.
in that order, on the news.
Which
They all
may
have to
or
say
may not have occurred after an underground tunnel jaunt from the Willard Hotel.
We're just saying we don't know for sure.
We're
but
just
we're not
saying.
saying.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
possible.
That's covered by insurrectionist privilege.
It happened in the executive office, essentially. So the operations center would be part of the executive office, I think. So you
Technically,
think
it happened while we were overthrowing the government, so therefore the government shouldn't have any power over that? Overruled.
That's basically the defense. I don't think we'll have time to cover it. But the defense is, look, you can't convict me, or like you can convict me of my obvious crime of insurrection is basically their defense, okay? But don't bother, because we might get amnesty if we can take control of Congress and get 2/3 vote in time before she's sworn in on the 3rd, which is basically saying, hey, if we can get this, new Congress in, seize power, fuck it, she's not applicable. She's got amnesty. So, yeah, it's really a fucked up legal argument, dude.
So you think MTG had a bad week? Madison Cawthorn had a bad week. Even Vladimir Putin may have had a bad week. But spare thought for this gentleman. Do you guys know who this guy is? Joseph F. Kahn. He is the new editor of the New York Times. Pulitzer Prize-winning China correspondent who rose to lead the international desk of the New York Times, and then as managing editor helped the sister newspaper into the digital era. Interesting. Steer the newspaper into the digital era, has been selected as the Times' new executive editor, the top newsroom job. And to say thank you, his photo editors actually chose to publish not only this amazing picture that you see on your screen right now, but also This photo you see right here. He must be really popular in the newsroom.
I thought you were serious for a second, dude. That's funny.
You're asking why he's not wearing
That
socks
poor
or
guy.
shoes.
You know, he just signed up for like the shittiest job in America. And you got to burn him like that, you know?
Just relaxing by the paper. In fact, I think it says here in the
Talk
caption,
about,
it says,
a job you can't win, man. Like the New York Times chief
Mr.
editor,
Khan
you know?
with paper is what it says at the bottom, or relaxing with paper or something.
And that Chinese symbol in Mandarin, that means investigating Trump. FBI finds no links to Russia.
And we wouldn't have it any other way. Look, even Vladimir Putin came in to say, cover up that thing. He's not having any of that. Anyhow, so that's the congratulations, Mr. Khan. You must have a very loyal and wonderful newsroom that are going to love you a lot. That photo is a classic. He's not wearing any shoes, by the way. Those are leather soled socks, because you have a pair of leather soled socks, don't you, Eric?
What is he, a ninja? That's like and the toe split a little bit. I mean,
I don't know. That's a hell of a pose. That is just a hell of a pose. All right.
Well, I'm redoing my corporate website, and you may not want to use this for narrative. You may, but I'm going to try and recreate the Elle Macpherson Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover with me.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think you'll be perfect.
Because if this is look, I'm not a design guy, but I want to be behind the times if this is the trend.
This is the trend. This is what the New York Times wants you to be posing like in your next photo shoot. So keep that in mind. All right, and on to Mr. Elon Musk. So this is. I mean, I know people are sort of freaking out. Is he going to buy Twitter? He may just buy Twitter. He's raised apparently $54 million or something like that. So that's a significant amount of money with which to buy Twitter. And everyone keeps wanting to have this conversation with people, and they're like, "Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing that that Elon Musk should buy Twitter?" And most people have no clue, right? I mean, I had to look this up because I know a little bit about him because we've been researching it for our narrative series, called The Secret Life of Elon Musk. And there's certainly a lot of inconsistencies, to say the least, about his story. And most people don't really have a good idea of whether it's a good thing or not. But you assume that the guy who made battery operated cars and made space travel less costly and possible on a much more regular basis. Also, a guy who's fathered maybe 12 kids. He's had 12 kids.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And while simultaneously hosting SNL, he also keeps having these rotation of beautiful women as his wives. I mean, he just seems so incredibly busy, but yet he still wants to buy Twitter.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the reason people suspect that it's not a legit kind of offer and it's not really what it seems is because he is not really what it seems. For one thing, we assume that he is wealthy, right? He's the world's richest man, right? That's what people say about him. Yes.
Yeah, I would assume.
Only he's not.
Yeah.
He's only rich on paper. So on paper, he's worth $300 billion or something ridiculous. But he's not really able to access any of that stuff. In other words, he is like the equivalent of every cash poor house rich person in America.
Is that why he's couch surfing? I just heard him bragging about this shit on some interview. He was like, "Yeah, dude, I don't even have a house, man. I just sleep at all my friends' pads."
It's exactly right. I mean,
if I was the fucking richest man in the world, dude, I'd be not doing that.
No, you would not. You'd be living in a nice house, right? Even if you were just on paper worth $300 billion, you'd try to
I'd have
live in a nice house
with other people that lived in it 364 days of the year that I wasn't there, and I'd probably have 20 of them, right?
I mean, I'd be showering myself with gold, whatever it is. I'd just be using that money as effectively as I could. But he doesn't have that money. So he had to go to the bank to buy Twitter. He has to go to the bank and actually loan against the amount of Tesla stock that he can borrow against. So there's a limited number of stock dollars or stock value that he can borrow against. And he was able to, at that point, get $25 billion to go to the sale of Twitter. So imagine that you've got only $25 billion or whatever it is you've already got. This is not the thing you would immediately think about doing, is buying Twitter, right? I mean, Twitter is Go ahead, Eric. You want to jump in there?
Well, if you had been reprimanded by the SEC over wasn't it misleading tweets or
I
something?
think it was, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and didn't he
If
sort
by
of
misleading you mean really
fraudulent?
increasing the valuation of your own stock. Yes.
Yeah. So
By saying that he
he's
could
kind
get it
of
financed by the Saudis, I think, to take Tesla private.
So he's looking to buy you get ownership control over a large stockpile of digital forensic evidence of potential pump and dump schemes that are against the Security and Exchange Act of 1933 and 1934,
I
something
didn't
like
even
that.
think about that. That's really interesting.
I like
That's
that.
really,
That's a
you know why
good
that's really
block.
interesting is because there's like a bit of a theory around the whole Tesla and SpaceX thing that it's a bit of a Ponzi scheme. You know, that basically they're one company that operates as two companies and they keep borrowing against each other, which seems like, you know, has gone well for them because the stocks keep rising. SpaceX is doing well, Tesla's doing well. It's all okay. But imagine one of these stocks crashes and then both companies go kaboom, which would leave, you know, astronauts stranded in space and cars careening off the road because that's what those companies do.
We'd bail them out, right? We'd have to go and
We'd
then
have
we'd have
to
to
bail
bail
them out. We'd have to go and get the astronauts back. We're going to leave them floating in space.
Too out of off of the Earth to fail or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Eric, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, do either of you guys remember the retail shop Crazy Eddie's in New York City in the 1980s?
I think you would have been.
About that.
Okay, you might have just gotten to New York, or
Did they have
people
weird
would.
commercials, Crazy Eddie on TV.
He was a disc jockey whose name Jerry something, whose name escapes me. You know, we've got VCRs, we've got boomboxes. Our prices are insane. Everyone, the commercials were very legendary.
Yeah,
right. So they were an enormous financial fraud, and the whole thing flamed out. And a great guy you should follow on Twitter is Sam Antar, Sammy Antar, who I believe is the nephew of Eddie Antar, who is Eddie of Crazy Eddie's. And he got nailed by the SEC and criminally charged, and he paid his price to society, and now he helps good guys catch crooks, and he describes himself as a retired crook. And you know, he is trolling Elon Musk like constantly on everything. Like he'll make some move and it's like, oh yeah, you do this at the last second, so they're holding the bag, this is called the 2-week, the 2-week bag break or whatever. He's like, oh,
I'm
man,
totally gonna follow this dude, man. Because here's my take on this shit. There's no fucking way there's not some evil fucking plan, okay? And I am a good compartmentalizer. So I love Tesla and SpaceX, especially SpaceX, because when I was talking about reforming elections, how we do elections, I'm like, look, we have NASA, we need SpaceX. So it's a very handy example, and it's been a mad success in terms of its mission objective. There's no doubt about that. That doesn't mean, though, that Elon Musk is an infallible person. In fact, he's quite fallible. And he has done some really shady shit politically. Number one, he wanted to subject his workers to reopen in California before there were vaccines, right? Yeah. He was like howling into the fucking wind about not being able to reopen Tesla before it was safe. And then in addition to that, like he's friends with Kanye West, dude. And I'm pretty sure had something to do with like setting that top spinning in 2020 when he had that really ridiculously, and luckily a total fail because the Republican Party took it seriously. They recruited him to run. Jared Kushner met with Kanye West to recruit him to run because they hoped that just being a celebrity would give him enough viability to siphon off voters. And it was a stupid plan, but number one, at least they try shit. And number two, it revealed to me that Elon Musk he's got political ideologies that are not conducive to holding a company like Twitter.
No, in fact, I would say that he thinks, this is his actual reasoning. He says publicly that he wants to buy Twitter because the entire civilization is at stake. That's really what he says. And I actually don't disagree with him entirely. I do think that there is a lot at stake with Twitter because we are having this battle between monarchists and autocrats on the one side, democracy on the other side. We're sort of seeing it, claim many, many lives in Ukraine right now. It's threatening to overtake the world. There is a sort of an ideological battle going on. And we haven't quite had it here yet because we still have Twitter. In some ways, Twitter is sort of our battle space, right? I mean, whether we love it or hate it, and some of us hate it, but we still go because you can actually have ideologies and ideological conversations take place. And it's a place still that has some sort of fairness. It's not completely fair, but you can be a show like Narrative and be on Twitter and get an audience. If we do the same show on Facebook every week, we do the same show on YouTube every week. We get a fraction of the audience on YouTube, no audience on Facebook, but we get an audience on Twitter because the algorithms are a little bit more fair than they are anywhere else. This kind of stuff must really piss Elon Musk off, and Elon Musk's managers or whoever it is that runs Elon Musk must get really, really mad at the idea that there is television that is unregulated that they can't touch because they own all of television. I mean, they own the networks, they own Fox News and OAN and Newsmax and what have you. And so Twitter's an unregulated, and Facebook, and Twitter's an unregulated space for them. So they want to buy it for that reason. They want to take it, they think it'll save civilization by taking it off the playing field. They want to take Twitter, firstly, they want to take it away from being public and turn it into a private organization. So there will be no SEC scrutiny, no anything about them. And then they want to rebalance the ideologies of the whole place. So it's a little disturbing.
It would destroy. I think the only reason he would buy it is for an agenda. You know, I think Elon Musk thinks Donald Trump should be on Twitter. I think he thinks that today. And I'm here to tell you that not only should he not be on Twitter, the banning of Donald Trump, had it occurred off of the social media platforms at the beginning, after he had violated their terms of use, maybe 10 or the first 20 times, if they had done it back then, we would not be sitting on the edge of a cliff right here in fucking America right now. And the last thing we need is a replatformed insurrection movement.
Exactly. Noel Kassler, our good friend, puts it this way. It's such a coincidence that Elon Musk tries to buy Twitter around the same time that Truth Social fails at GOP. It's a good point. He's got a point, as Noel does.
He usually does.
Yeah. Now, here's the plan. Here's Elon Musk's plan. He wants to, social media platforms' policies are good if the most extreme 10% on the left and the right are equally unhappy. Why he says that, why he believes that, I have no idea. But if you think about it, that's where we're at in America today. We're at a very divisive stage of America, that everyone's sort of angry at each other and pissed off at America. And there's this belief that, like the Reagan doctrine, everything should be somehow balanced, that we should give the GOP as much credibility as the Democratic Party, even though the GOP is spouting a bunch of lies and propaganda and bullshit. Versus the truth, which is what the Democrats might be saying, or others might be saying, that we should give them equal rating, which is crap, really.
Well, so there was a very revealing story that came out in the Los Angeles Times, and it sort of buried the lead. It was like the Twitter botnet that supported Elon Musk since 2013. So, this is what we need to, if this is going to be the town square, right? And we're talking about the left or the right. We touched on this a lot in 2016, and we need to do more of it. Freedom of speech should not be freedom of speech for Chinese, Iranian, North Korean, and Russian and Moldovan botnets to fire 75,000 tweets, harass people. I went viral on Twitter in December 2016 for going, hey, there's Russia and Trump, and that blew up. And they've taken out a ton of these botnets, but the amount of, I was told by some of my people, dude, do not search for your name on anything, not Twitter, definitely not Google, definitely not Twitter. There were botnets. That's not to say I'm not unpleasant and that people don't, say, authentic, mean things, some of which might be true. But 78, I used to, go, I'm from Vermont and Bernie Sanders never used to be that impressive to us. 78,000, kill yourself right now. It was he had lunch with some family members of mine who's like, he eats with his mouth open. I mean, this is not a hot war. here. We're from Vermont. We met him. Just don't think he's the savior. It's like, throw yourself in an open volcano now. And
as
like,
you started mentioning that name, you started buzzing, by the way. It's something about your microphone, Eric, has gone and started buzzing the second you started talking about Bernie Sanders.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear that.
They're back. They're in the machine.
I mean, here's the thing, Eric, like that, like if you read if you read my book on 2016, which is a political science explanation for what happened, then you're going to find out how important that both parties were divided in different ways, but the Democratic Party was internally divided between Sanders and Clinton. And so much of that division, when I wrote that book, we had really only a very tertiary idea that the Russians had been engaging in propaganda and disinfo with bots. They were just starting to come out. Cambridge Analytica had not even broken yet. And, so we didn't really understand. I was documenting how divisive the Democratic nomination was and how much angst, when you could see the angst that first night when they would.
Okay, so now I'm going to, sorry, Rachel, we can't, it's your microphone, believe it or not, that's doing the weird buzzing and not Eric. So they're in your machine and we can't hear you as you're disappearing over there. I mean, we can hear you, but you sound like.
She sounds
You
great.
can't hear me? Is that better?
No, it sounds weird. It sounds like you're robotized.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to go away now.
I think you have to reconnect. Can you reconnect? Okay, let's try that. While she does it, I've got to quickly reset some of these screens up because I wasn't prepared for that. So here's.
Well, I can read an article about her book, and, so that way we don't lose her.
She'll be back in a second. Hopefully she'll reconnect with us. I hope she's going to reconnect. Come back, Rachel. We could talk a little bit more about Elon Musk, unless you want to read about his work. I just want to finish a little bit about him because, there is this. Oh, here she is. Let's see if this works. Ta-da.
He's also South African, right?
He's also South African. You're back.
Am I better?
A little bit better. You don't sound as
That's
squeaky.
Only a little bit. I feel like the microphone's telling me I should shake out early this week.
Well, if you want to get out early, you're welcome to.
What are you gonna do? You guys, Eric, close this thing out for everybody.
Okay. Rachel, thank you so much. Rachel Bitterkofer.
I got you.
Thank you. We love you, and thank you very much for your time tonight. And thanks for watching MTG. And she's out. She's having a weekend. Elon Musk is South African. I'm also South African. We're very similar ages. He's a multi-billionaire. I'm broke, but but we come from very different parts of South Africa.
He supported autocracy, and there was a lot of money in that, and we didn't. So there's less money in that.
Look, the thing is, he came from a very different part of South Africa, where he came from Pretoria, where the much more Afrikaans-speaking, nationalist, white nationalist kind of place. I came from Johannesburg, and it was more metropolitan and certainly much more mixed. And I didn't really like the apartheid government because they thought about gay people as much as even worse than black people, and they really were offended by that. Not unlike the Republican Party of today, they sort of have the same kind of Venn diagram. But he obviously did not feel the same way. His dad had some ties to the Zambian gem industry, emeralds, and what have you. Which, I mean, you only have if you're sort of connected to sort of the underworld. I mean, I don't know. I don't know anyone else that has ties to the emerald industry in Zambia, but.
Is that right? Is mining? I know, mining these days. I've looked at it strategically, where China's tried to lock all that stuff up, and blood diamonds. That's a thing, but I didn't know necessarily that mining going all the way back to those decades, that was underworld.
Oh yeah, that was all this. The same parties at play, the same Russians and Israelis and Americans all trying to get as much money as they can out of Africa, and putting up all these dictatorial governments as proxy states and what have you. The point is, behind all of this, he is not necessarily the guy we should be giving Twitter to, even for $50 billion, whatever it is he's going to raise. Even if it's, even if he promises you the very, very best for Twitter, he's not going to deliver it. In fact, chances are he's going to take away everything we love about Twitter and replace it with something else. Like he's going to bulldoze the town square. We're going to have nothing but control and regulation in a place that we've not had that much control and regulation, and we shouldn't have any of it. So No, thank you, Elon Musk.
So
I want to keep Twitter.
you'll have to buy a share of Tesla stock every time you tweet.
Exactly. Or Bitcoin. Isn't he a big guy on Bitcoin?
Isn't it funny these things all go together?
They do. We should actually start an Indiegogo or something to buy Twitter. Maybe we can raise $54 or $55 billion.
Look, we did so much work on Louis DeJoy here. Here's my radical plan. I want, once we get DeJoy out and we have like non-autocrat mobsters running the postal service,
I want like R2D2 now.
You're sounding great. You sound great as always.
I think it must be my system then. Oh well, sorry. We keep going. We'll try and make it out.
Hopefully, the good people are hearing us wonderfully. But I would like the U.S. Postal Service to run social media. Here's why: things that you do over the Postal Service in the United States, for example, are subject to criminal law. Like if you commit a crime and you use a bank check or you transfer documents, you can be cited for mail fraud. Right. Or if it's over wire, if you're shuffling money around, then it becomes wire fraud. And it's you can say whatever you want over the U.S. mail system, but if you commit a crime with it, then that is something that you have to answer for. Also, in other types of public square things, like public speech, there are limits to speech. Like, for example, I was joking about the botnets, but there have also been human intelligence kind of nets of agents out there, people looking to smear certain folks' reputations, take their livelihoods. You ever hear of that?
Never.
Well, that should be subject to defamation, and you kind of need some probably some technology that would be sophisticated enough to nail these communications to people. Like if I mail a threat to Nancy Pelosi, I'm in some deep shit, right? Yeah. And by the way, do you remember the first guys who arrested Steve Bannon on Guo Wengi's yacht? Do you know who took him down?
Yeah,
there's the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. Yeah, exactly. They're gnarly. So
you make a good point. I mean, it really is. There's no regulation, and the USPS, even under Louis DeJoy, although he would have to go away. But is he still there? You think he's still there?
He's still there, maybe.
Yeah. So I think your point is valid. I mean, one thing that Elon Musk wants to do is take away all spam bots and make every human authenticate themselves, which would be a real suppression of free speech. But what you pointed out is quite correct. There are a lot of human groups, intelligence operations that could replace the spam bots and be much more effective without the spam bots in their way, in organizing and amplifying messages, or, as you point out, discrediting people or disqualifying them from the public space by making them seem like something that they're not. That's a very good point that you raise, that we could be, even though they're human people, they're human and authenticated people, they would be much more likely to be successful if they were running it under a different regime where there was no spam bots and they could really do their work. So that's interesting point of view.
I had a certain tech exec after the 2016 election who tried DMing me and saying, well, man, what about free speech? I'm like, Russian intelligence should not get free speech in America's election or France's election or Brexit.
Or Fox News access, which they seem to have 24/7. I mean, I still don't get any of that. Like, just get rid of it. Just get rid of all these Russian intelligence officers that are running all these news and media organizations. Unnecessary. They don't need it. They don't need to be mainlined into our homes. They can reach your kids.
This is a brand new. This is a brand new era of communications technology and media, and there's almost always a Wild West period, especially since the telegraph, was revolutionary in its way. I mean, before that, the fastest internet you had was a horse and a guy on a horse, right?
Yeah.
It revolutionized some things, but radio really did that. This is where you start getting nationwide media. It changes music, and it changes, actually, you start getting people, especially when you add video to it, you get people changing the accents and standardizing the accents of a language in a country. These technologies change society every time. Yeah. And, we usually use them for sex and war first and then kind of go on from there. But with social media, it's if you think about the films of Leni Riefenstahl in Nazi Germany, right? She was an incredible innovator in how to create, emotional images and, not a nice thing they did with it, but incredibly effective. And then, we recognize that as propaganda. And, but it was a Wild West. Like, no one understood like how you could whip up people into such a frenzy using these images and radio and movies and stuff like that. And then we knew, and it's like, oh, we need, we had boards of broadcasters, and when everything was over the public airwaves, then you did have the fairness doctrine in the United States, and it's different in different countries. Social media came out, and it's become indispensable. And we didn't have any, maybe we were limited in the technology to make this possible. Maybe we needed a blockchain type of thing to really authenticate who's who, so that even if you want to stay anonymous, we can track back to you in case you commit a crime or something. But in the Wild West period, anyone, you can set up 28,000, Huawei phones in Moldova and say, hi, I'm a black person who loves Donald Trump. And, and that did fit right in the use of American free speech. Well, we need to get rid of that and, keep the rest of this.
Yeah, so. I agree. And this is from Homeland, the TV show, but it's on the floor, is it, of the CIA when you walk in there? Not that I've ever been, but it says, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. It does not say, and you shall know the balance, and the balance shall set you free. It talks about truth. We don't need to give everyone balance and equal say, Mr. Musk. We just need the truth out there as best as we can have it. Also, this one I love from New Hampshire, the best motto of any state in America: live free or die. Because that's what's at stake, people. That's what's at stake. Who said that first? John Stark. No. You know who John Stark is? He's a revolutionary general. And I think it was 1949.
Did you just scoop me on New England revolutionary history, dude?
I did.
I'm coming back with South African history next, sucker.
We'll go at it next week on the after show. That is the show for tonight. We're a little late for ending the show. Eric and Rachel.
One more point. You brought up the greatest point here, because there's an old George Carlin comedian bit where he talks about how the states are defined by their license plates, and in Idaho, on a license plate it says famous potatoes, and in New Hampshire it says live free or die. And he says the secret to life is exactly somewhere in the direct middle between famous potatoes and live free or die, but I think it's a little bit closer to famous potatoes. That was George Carlin's line. So
I think he's probably a little right, but I do like the live free or die for the ending of the show, so we'll stick with that. And famous potatoes, I
like it.
Have a good night, Eric. Have a great weekend. It's good to see you again. I'll see you again on Tuesday.
Ciao.
And good night, everybody. Don't forget you can join patreon.com/narrative, where you can support Narrative. He's out for the weekend. Rachel's left me alone. It's all just me and you, but I got to go too. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to our patrons for making tonight's show possible. That is the after show.
Narrative is made possible by viewers like you. You too can support our independent journalism by going to www.patreon.com/narrative.